And now it's time to dig into what this technology means for those using it on the ground and what the future holds for entrepreneurs across the United States. This is a really cool group coming up. I'm now joined by John Dearie, president of the Center for American Entrepreneurship, Heather Spalding, the founder and CEO of Cambrian, a Kansas-based company that uses augmented reality and machine learning to bring home repair projects to life. And before I say something else, just go online and Google Cambrian. It's got a really cool startup story. I just want to, give kudos where that belongs. And Lorena Camargo, founder and CEO of Pearl Trans Logistics, another awesome startup some time ago that has just grown like crazy. A Southern California-based courier service that uses AI on a day-to-day level to meet client needs. Lorena, let me just start with you. I mean, your introduction when I was reading your bio basically said you basically grew up as a logistics person. You were kind of heart and soul into this, and for a rather modest amount of money, you began delivering stuff, getting things, one day delivery. So I'd love to get a kind of quick snapshot of your origin story, but I'd also like to know how you have taken what was once a small startup and used the empowering dimensions of AI to broaden your services.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started in the industry at 17, right out of high school. I was just getting a part-time job, didn't know what a courier company was. And, I was just there for an interview, needed a job just to pay for my books for college. And then I just fell in love with the people that I worked with, the customers that we worked for, and just the issues that we helped them solve. So I eventually dropped out of school and started working full time. I was promoted to VP of operations in a few years' time. Because I just fell in love with what we were doing.
What were you doing?
But after that,
what were you doing, Lorena?
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that.
What were you doing?
I started in customer service.
I see.
And then I worked my way up into dispatch, then VP of operations. But sadly, a few years after that, the company I was working for had to close down, go out of business. So I found, though, an opportunity to venture out on my own. But at that time, I was still 23, going on to had very experience. Which is why, I showed up with my bank statement, budget, and I showed up to the bank. This is what I want to do. This is the logistics company that I want to grow. But because I had very little business experience, they told me no. Come when you've reached sales. So I had to go to a friend of a friend who luckily loaned me out $25,000 so I could start Pearl Trans Logistics.
Well, that's great. And how are you using AI specifically?
So at the beginning, because we were very frugal, we were running on limited funds, we had to rely on technology. So through our dispatch provider, CXC Software, who's based in Phoenix, that's pretty much what runs our company. When the CSRs here place orders over the phone, it's through that software where they input it. And we already have set certain algorithms. They call it intelligent dispatching, which pretty much ranks available drivers based on the geographical location of each order and current driver workloads. And this is very important to our clients because 80% of the work that we do is on demand, which means that 80% of our day is customers calling us, hey, I need this delivered in 2 hours. Hey, I need this delivered in 1 hour. So because of that, we rely on it to gather data on what time of day we have the most surge in orders, and even specific geographical locations or hotspots, which helps our operations team have enough drivers covering that area to provide our clients with the best service and meet their deadlines.
It sounds cool. I know I need you with my world of constantly needing stuff. Heather, Kansas City loves you. I mean, I just kind of got in, I typed that Cambrian in this, and your startup story is fascinating. I have a really hard time figuring out how to drill a high-end screw into a wall and make it stick and to go in. It sounds, tell us how you can help me.
So really what our technology does, we mostly license to kind of enterprise level businesses, but now, especially with the pandemic, we're licensing to all sorts of retailers and manufacturers. But really what we allow you to do is take a picture of your space. And if you want to see what it looks like with different paint colors on your walls, different wallpaper, different flooring, a rug, we could visualize that for you easily with our technology. So we use a lot of AI in our technology to do the segmentation, to find where the floor is, to find the camera height, to find the orientation of how the floor should go to the walls and the size. So really you can just take a photo of your space, upload it, and then we do all the work for you. And you can see all these different kind of home transformations easily. And so we license that technology to a lot of other companies.
So it's really about interior design
purposes.
function, and you have it's sort of virtual reality, right?
Yeah, so we call it augmented reality because it adds to your existing environment, whereas virtual reality would create a complete virtual environment. So we do some live AR through apps, but what we found is a lot of the retailers and manufacturers have websites already. So by running our visualizer tool on a website, we can actually reach out to even small businesses that are struggling with this pandemic because their showrooms are closed. For a small fee, we can get them up and running, and they can just send people to their website. The people can visualize the flooring that they want to buy and go ahead and order it online. So that's sort of what we do.
Now, I want to jump to John Dearie in a moment, but my understanding is that you won a competitive competition, a kind of pitch competition in Kansas City, got $100,000 or something a couple of years ago. Just before I jump to John, because I want to talk about how in these moments when things are changing, what did you most need? What we heard from Lorena is she most needed that loan from a friend of $25,000 and all this other stuff. I mean, what are the things on your dashboard that you most need to take that spark that you have to something cool and real?
It always comes down to money. As far as even beginning a startup, you need a safety net of some sort, whether you have an education or healthcare through a spouse or whatever it is, you need a safety net, and money is always going to be helpful for that safety net. And as far as building the technology and the vision, you have to be able to hire people, and especially in really specialized, fast growth environments of high growth technology, you need to be able to hire people from all over the world. And so you need to be able to pay for that. So funding is always going to be one of our top issues.
That sounds great. John, how do these two startups sound to you? I know you run the Center for American Entrepreneurship. Do they measure up well?
Well, I think what you just got was two great explanations of why entrepreneurs and the startups that they launch are so incredibly important to the economy and to economic growth and job creation. It's business people, it's entrepreneurs like Lorena and like Heather who take technologies and innovations like AI and get them out into the economy, out into society at large, by way of commercialization, by way of starting a new business. The economics behind that, we know from the great work of American economist Robert Solow, who wrote two seminal papers about this in the 50s and won the Nobel Prize for this insight in 1987, that these innovations that entrepreneurs uniquely are responsible for in getting them out into the economy, by way of the effect on gains in productivity, doing more with less, is really the driver of economic growth and job creation. So yes, I love hearing the stories of entrepreneurs. My colleagues and I, on a regular basis, get out of Washington, D.C. and do roundtables with entrepreneurs. That's where I first met Heather, as a matter of fact, is a roundtable in Kansas. And it's always invigorating and hope-inspiring to hear the kind of stories that you've just heard. It makes you very optimistic about the future of America.
John, I'm interested in the degree in terms of your experience, because I know you cover the whole gamut when it comes to entrepreneurship, and that's entrepreneurship in every. It can be in food, it can be as we're talking about tech. It could, but is it your gut that AI and some of these new technology platforms that we're seeing come along, particularly in this pandemic, when so many people have been shoved online, and then had to find new tools. Does this feel like an inflection point to you in terms of how small businesses are going to find new ways to empower themselves with this technology?
I think absolutely. The pandemic is both a great challenge. It's a great accelerator of trends that I think were already underway. You know, like for example, if you think about just the impact of this technology that we're using now to communicate, Zoom or these types of technologies. Telemedicine is a technology that was already beginning to take hold, but I think was experiencing some obstacles, from incumbent providers, AI certainly, augmented reality, all of these things and the ways that that innovators, entrepreneurs like Lorena and Heather, they use these technologies to solve the problems and the challenges that they're confronted with. And I think the pandemic is just a tremendous accelerator of existing trends that I think had already started and were underway, but have been accelerated by 5 or 10 years, or even new trends or new technologies that have been brought to deal with the challenges associated with the pandemic. And this, as I said, is the great economic service provided by entrepreneurs and how they drive gains in productivity, economic growth, job creation, opportunity. It's folks like Heather and
Lorena.
Yes, who are the great heroes of the economy and are the people who we have to rely on to pull the economy out of the ditch it's in, and they deserve and they need all the help that policymakers can provide.
Well, let me jump back to Lorena and Heather and ask you both, because I want people, sometimes we hear the words AI and it just kind of eyes glaze over. They don't know what it means. Lorena, you gave I think a very interesting example about the sort of spatial location and timing and looking at the different things. I'm more used to how much I used to hate those bots talking to me, those customer service bots online. They've improved a lot. I vastly prefer them now to real human beings. It's actually true. But I'm interested, if you were to kind of look at your particular business, or maybe others in your business, as you think of it, because I know you're trying to fix problems all the time, what would you like to see AI solve for you if it could? Lorena?
Well, one of the things that you mentioned about chat boxes, I loved what Intuit did in the segment before. This is still a people business. There's still going to be humans. So behind those chat boxes, there's still, phone number that you could call to get that human interaction. As far as AI goes, it's just really exciting, everything that's happening now. We're actually trying to take GPS a step further. Recently, we started working with more pharmaceutical companies because pharmacies want to reduce the amount of people traffic that go into their facilities. So they're looking more to outsource to deliver these prescriptions. So we never deliver to as many residences as we have this year. However, because this is LA, there's more dense areas where it's large apartment buildings, there's gated communities. So even though, there's like a certain address, 10202 Washington, doesn't mean like that the entrance is there. So now we're trying to use, we're implementing a technology where based on where the actual building is on the property, it'll speed up telling the driver which gate or door to go through to make sure that these deliveries are done a whole lot quicker. So really, it's just exciting just seeing everything that's happening and just trying to implement it in our business to better serve our clients.
And Heather, that's a great answer, Lorena. But Heather, what kind of skills, tasks, tools, problems would you like to see this network of AI tools help you solve that you haven't solved yet?
Yeah, like Lorena mentioned, the last speaker that talked about the Intuit books, I'm going to have to look into that because that could be really helpful to see some trends that maybe I'm not catching in cash flow, because cash flow is always going to be an issue for small business. But I know for us, how we would like to use AI in our next steps is to take what we're doing now a few steps further so it's even better for the users. So how we're going to do this is by mapping a space and measuring the area so we can tell a person this is how many tiles or this is the amount of rugs or flooring that you need to order, just to make it that much easier. So it kind of takes out the middle steps to where somebody could visualize a floor in their space. They could take the measurements automatically using our tool and then order it right there. And so basically we're making a really great end-to-end product for the manufacturers and the retailers to get to the consumer, let them kind of take charge end to end. And then we'll probably use Lorena, her logistics, to get it delivered to their house on time.
Wow, great.
I'm here.
Well, we've got a, that's good. We have a question from the audience for the panel. So let's, David, do you have a question?
Hello, my name is David Rickster, former U.S. Department of Treasury official and CEO and founder of M Street X, a place-based fintech platform that will leverage artificial intelligence to identify flexible capital based on a small business's profile. I'm curious to learn from our practitioners how they believe we can leverage AI to support the accelerated transition into the fourth industrial revolution. Initially, we had thought that this process was going to take 5 to 10 years. However, due to COVID-19, we are now seeing that this has now been compressed to 6 months.
So, Heather, you want to tackle the fourth industrial revolution question?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think it's kind of what John had talked about. One of the great things about small businesses and startups is that we're really agile and we're very resilient. So we can move quickly, and instead of doing layoffs and furloughs and having to re-examine, our budgets that we had set for 5 years, we can quickly move into a space where we see a need. And this is where you get startups popping up and rapid growth. And the great thing about AI is it's essentially doing the work of people at a very fast rate. So even for us, when we started, we did algorithms by hand to see where the walls were and highlights and shadows and stuff. But once we got into using AI to do it, it just made it faster, more efficient, more accurate. And this is really for fintech and for investment. What David was saying, I think it's just going to be, there's going to be a lot of people seeing opportunity here and seeing holes and gaps and being able to jump in and rapidly fill those spaces with a startup that uses this technology to just really rapidly build something that we can use immediately. I mean, it sounds great to have a technology that could fit us to an investor based on our profile. And that's one of those things that would be incredibly useful for startups.
And let me now jump to John. John, I think what's interesting about David's question, well, there were two parts to it. Really, one was about, flexible and more nimble financing, based on a profile of a company, which, through reputational research, through, lots of other data and information seems to be something doing. And then kind of looking at really the Internet of Things dimension of that. But I'm interested in the finance side because I hear this from everybody. We just heard it earlier from our two colleagues on this panel. Money and financing. You go to most large banks, not all of them, but most large banks, you've got to be sort of a sizable small business to get a loan. I mean, it used to be at B of A, the minimal loan was $5 million. I don't know what it is now, but that's so much larger than most new ventures and new entrepreneurships that are living off credit cards and neighbors and friends for support. So I'm just interested in your insights onto that financial dimension.
Yes. So, I mean, the problem with that new businesses have always had with banks, or they've had a couple of problems. One is the problem that you just talked about, and that is that the costs to the bank, the paperwork, the personnel, the resources that go into the credit analysis decision are pretty much the same, regardless of if the loan is a small loan or a larger loan. And so it makes sense for banks to focus on larger loans because for the same amount of input, they potentially earn much more. And so small businesses, small loans tend not to interest banks. The other problem that new businesses have with banks, of course, is that startups tend not to have the things that banks need to lend against. You don't have a track record, you don't have any inventory, you don't have any earnings, you don't have a credit history. So this is the whole realm of new businesses and startups for both of those and other reasons was ripe for disruption from other startups, from fintechs to step into that space and meet the needs of startups, particularly in terms of the application of technology to the credit analysis decision. As you said, it's a lot of data to input, and it's much faster, as Heather pointed out. It's much faster. It's much cheaper to do that kind of analysis by way of technology. And this is another area that I think we've seen a great acceleration of this by way of the pandemic. If you look at the stock prices, for example, of companies like Square and PayPal and other fintech companies, they, like other stay-at-home or COVID stocks like Zoom and Amazon and other companies, are soaring. So I think that this is going to be, that the pandemic in a way opened up this opportunity for great acceleration of this process that was already underway, but has tremendously accelerated, and I think is going to change the whole realm of financing of new and small businesses forever.
Thank you for that. Look, I know we're nearly out of time, but I want to get one more question in, if I can, for Lorena, and use her mind and how she puts together companies and help somebody out who's asking this. But from Ann.
Hi, my name is Ann Barth. I'm the Executive Director of Tech Connect West Virginia, based in Charleston, West Virginia. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about how this will affect small businesses in rural America.
So, Lorena, I'm going to put the ball on you. How can you take the cool stuff you have built and replicate, the most important parts of that for a non-urban setting? I think that's a great question.
Yeah, absolutely. So our challenges here for deliveries is that it's such a dense area, but in like a rural area, there's more distance in between stops. So you really have to make use of space capacity to make sure you're not just using a driver just for one run. Try to see what you could pair up. So definitely, even so, technology is as important here in a dense area, a rural area as well. There's so many successful career companies that I know in the Midwest. I'm out of answers how they do it. I learned from them what to put in practice here in LA as well.
Well, before we just close out, let me ask Heather this too. Heather, could you have invented your virtual reality, see all the new cool stuff, redo your interior place if you were in Morgantown, West Virginia?
Would they be able to use it?
No, would you have been able to create it if you had been there? I guess what I'm finding is a lot of people,
So,
what Ann was asking is, what can tech do? And what I'm finding is a lot of small towns in America have brilliant people in them with great ideas.
Oh, yeah. That's one of the great things about technology is it really doesn't matter where you're at. So no matter where you're at, as long as you have a good internet connection, you could do training virtually using something like AWS or Microsoft or whatever, or you could build your own servers and train at your house. The drawback of a very rural area might be if they don't have gigabit internet, it might be all day for them to upload or download data sets. So that's one of the things that would be really important to maybe these smaller towns versus a larger city. But in terms of talent comes from anywhere. And if AI is something you're interested in building, there's so many great resources online. There's no reason why a student, we've hired people with no college experience that have just taught themselves, brilliant people from rural areas that have taught themselves really valuable skills, and they wanted to know more about AI, and we set them on it. So talent comes from anywhere. You can build this anywhere. That's the only thing that would maybe hold back a smaller town.
Broadband connectivity. I hear about every day when I talk about business or moderate anything. John, quick thought, anything?
Well, I mean, I would just echo what Heather said. I think she's demonstrated Kansas is not that different from West Virginia, and she's been able to produce this incredibly sophisticated new business that, as you pointed out, has won awards, is changing the way that people approach the redesign of their house. And so as long as the technology is there and the talent and the person who has the ideas and they have the basic resources in terms of access to capital, as we talked about, then I think that these kinds of businesses can be produced anywhere in America.
You know, I just say, just as we close up, I am, you know, I have the privilege of interviewing a lot of people, and lately it's been a lot on the COVID-19, coronavirus, health pandemic, you know, when are we going to get a vaccine? It is nice to hear the I guess, optimism and, you know, to some degree, how well you've all done amidst a lot of stress and pressure. I love this conversation. Thank you so much for joining me. Heather Spalding, founder and CEO of Cambrian, Lorena Camargo,
Great,
CEO and founder of Pearl Transportation and Logistics, and John Dearie, president of the Center for American Entrepreneurship. Thank you all very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks for
Thank you so
having
much.
us.